Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about something serious, and it is my way to really explain how astrology works, particularly Vedic astrology. So what I wanted to talk about today is the passing of Pope Francis, because it is so clearly seen in his chart. And yes, a lot of you might say, well, why didn't you say it before on YouTube? Well, I did say it before, but it was in my astrology class for my students. We looked at the Pope's chart way back in February, and I predicted that he would pass April 20th. You can verify that with any of my students. They will be here to back me up on that. It is recorded and documented. And another thing, if you received my world predictions that I put out in December, I had a 6-hour class on my world predictions. And in that class, it was in December that I filmed that of 24. And I predicted that the Pope would pass around the end of April. But the exact day that I said in our classes with my university, and that is my online University of Vedic Astrology, we studied the Pope's chart. And it was in February, because this is when he became really ill. And everyone pretty much thought he was going to pass then. I said, oh no, it's not going to happen yet, but it will happen April. And I said April 20th. Now, mind you, he passed April 21st at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. And this is less than 24 hours that I predicted his death. And when I predicted April 20th, I wasn't even aware that it was Easter Sunday, but I saw where the planets were, and it involves Saturn and Rahu. So I gotta say, if you can get a prediction within a 24-hour span, it's nailed. So it's not necessarily that I even like talking about when somebody's going to pass or die, but I wanted to do this video just so you could see how precise this prediction was based on where the transiting planets were on that day of his death. So let me scoot over here and I will show you what I referred to in the students class that I had online for my university, as well as the prediction that I made in the year of 2025. And that's actually still for sale on my website, galacticcenter.org. Now remember, all of this, you can get my predictions delivered to your email address by going to my website, galacticcenter.org. And there you will sign up for my free newsletter. You will know all of my offerings, what's constantly going on. Plus, every week I will give you the predictions for the world. And yes, I knew something was about to happen in the world, and it is happening. There is so much anger and violence going on in the world right now. I'll leave that for other videos. But for this one, for prediction's sake, for you to understand how astrology works, I'm making this video. So I'm going to scoot over and we are going to put up the chart of Pope Francis, and I'm going to show you what was happening in his chart. Now, in Vedic astrology, we always look at the dashas first. The dashas are the predictive tool that gives the big picture of what life's about. These are very long cycles, such as he had just entered the Venus cycle, and it's a 20-year cycle. But this cycle is so important in terms of he entered this Venus cycle October 14th of 2023. And yes, it's a 20-year cycle. So, I mean, it's ridiculous to say, oh, well, he's going to die in the Venus cycle. Well, of course he is. It's a 20-year cycle. He's at the time that he went into the cycle, he was what, around 86? And he passed in 85. So Venus, the reason why I'm saying Venus is the cycle he would pass in, well, obviously because of his age and the cycle's 20 years. But his health and everything started to change as soon as he went into the cycle, because Venus is in his 8th house. The 8th house is the house of death. So many, many years prior to this, you could probably say, well, he has longevity and he will make it all the way to his Venus cycle. But he will not. That will be the cycle that will take him out, in other words. So he was in Venus's cycle from October of 2023 through February of 2027. Now, I know the whole grand cycle is 20 years, but there's sub-cycles. That's what I'm naming it. Venus is the one that I just named. After that comes Venus Sun, Venus Moon. All the other planet sub-cycles will transpire within that 20-year cycle. But he was in the very beginning phase of Venus, and that will take him out, since Venus is the planet in the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of death, guys. So this is serious business for a man of his age to enter into it. And you could positively predict it would be in the very beginning phase, because the beginning phase of any Mahadasha cycle is always a duplicate of the grand cycle. So when you enter any cycle, it'll be like Mercury, Sun, K2. This one was Venus. Okay, so that's the cycle. That gives the big picture. The next thing that we do as astrologers is we look at the transits. And the transits are simply where the planets are moving in the sky. And it is most definitely the planets that stay in a sign the longest that have the biggest impact at the time, because they're more rare and they're more powerful. But not only that, when you have a long-standing transit come together, the faster moving planets are the key to timing it exactly when it will happen. Okay, so looking at his chart, I want you to look at where his sun sits. His sun sits there at 2 degrees of Sagittarius, right next to natal Rahu. Rahu is the north node of the moon, and his sun Rahu are within a degree of each other, and Rahu sits at 1 degree of Sagittarius, while the sun sits at 2 degrees of Sagittarius. Now, looking at where the planets are transiting, by Sunday, this was April 20th, that is when both Saturn and Rahu became 2 degrees of Pisces. Okay, now they sit together for 2 degrees for quite a number of days. Okay, so on the day that he passed, on Monday, the 21st, at 7:30 a.m. 2025, Saturn and Rahu were at 2 degrees of Pisces. So they stick together for a number of days, almost a week or so. But I picked the 20th because that was the first day that they actually aligned together by degree. So Saturn's special aspects that are 100% in power are, in sidereal Vedic astrology, are the conjunction, which means it's exactly this sitting on top of another planet, conjunct. The third aspect, which means it's 3 signs away, same degree. And the opposition, which is exactly opposite, same degree. And the other 100% in power aspect that Saturn gives in Vedic astrology, according to the great seer Parashara, is the 10th aspect. This means that if you count from where Saturn is situated at 2 degrees of Pisces and you count the signs to where the sun is, the sun sits 10 placements from Saturn. Okay, so that is Saturn's 10th aspect to the sun, all right? So Saturn is exactly at 2 degrees, and when Saturn conjoined with Rahu in the heavens, so on the day that he passed, Rahu and Saturn were at 2 degrees of Pisces, but actually the sun, which is the life force, sits at the midpoint between the nodal axes, Rahu and Ketu, and that is so significant. This is beyond belief that this is at the exact midpoint. But from the sun, Saturn is 4 placements, which is a square. But if you count back from where Saturn is in the sky to where the sun is, the sun sits 10 positions away from Saturn. This is a 100% in power aspect to have this exact square. But the midpoint between the nodal axes gives it a double whammy. This is remarkable that it hit exactly. And that is why I predicted in my class that this would be around the time, the day. But there was a few other things that were going on in the sky that I want to point out too. That was probably enough to take him out. But what I find really, really interesting is that on the day and the time that he passed, Pluto and the moon were exactly conjunct in the heavens at 9 degrees of Capricorn. Pluto is the planet of transformation. And it's sort of like, it's so interesting that he made it through Easter Sunday, the day of resurrection, transformation, and passed pretty much hours after the Mass that he gave. So I think many times will keeps us here. So it was his will that got him through Easter Sunday, but his body could not last beyond that. And here's what I'm saying about the Pluto moon. Interesting, because I don't know if you can hear the thunder here right now. It's talking to us, saying, yes, this is right. This is profound. But the moon is with Pluto. Pluto is the planet of transformation, change, and death. And they were both exactly conjunct in his 8th house, the house of death. Wow. It doesn't get more textbook case than this. Furthermore, the sun was around 6-7 degrees of Aries, where his midhaven is. The midhaven is the MC in a chart, and it is the highest point in the chart. So the sun being there, exalted I might add, on the MC represents that this is going to be seen by the world this day. This is an event from his chart that takes precedent for the world to see, the highest point in the chart where the sun is. And the next thing, if you will look where transiting Jupiter is, let me just tell you, it's at 25 degrees of Taurus. And if you will note, his Mars sits at 26 degrees of Virgo. So in other words, Jupiter is casting a trine within a degree to his Mars. And his Mars sits in the 4th house. This is considered the end of life. And Jupiter is usually prominent in a death chart because death is actually a beautiful thing. We fear it, we're horrified by it, but in reality, when someone passes to the other side, it is a beautiful thing. And you know, I love this saying. My teacher once told me this. When you're born, you're crying and everyone's rejoicing. But when you die, you're rejoicing and everyone's crying. So that's kind of the way it is. But going back to one more thing that I wanted to point out, the fact that the Sun and Mars were in a square to each other on this day exactly. The transiting Sun was 7 degrees of Aries, while Mars was 7 degrees of Cancer. And this is the end of a ruler, a leader. And I did say that in my predictions for the weeks. And that's what I was basing it on. This is a leader. This is a ruler. And even if you look at where transiting Venus was on that day at 1 degree of Pisces, it was exactly squaring Rahu and opposing, well, no, natal Rahu. So I'm transiting Venus at 1 degree of Pisces, set at the midpoint between his nodal axes of Ketu in his chart. Notice his Ketu's at 1 degree of Gemini and his Rahu's at 1 degree of Sagittarius, and transiting Venus sat right there at the midpoint. Why is that significant? Because he was in Venus's Mahadasha. The nodal axes, whether you look at the transiting nodes or the natal nodes, represent destiny, beginning and end of life, and bringing us into the world. Rahu takes us in and Ketu takes us out. There's just so many things that this was his time, and it's a joyful exit. He made it through Easter Sunday, and that was so important to him. Maybe he was supposed to pass that day, but I'm telling you, through will, we can outwit the stars sometimes. I got to tell you, I know this is true. And it's like this. We come to days of crossroads, and we can choose whether we stay or go. But most probably there's a time when it's best that we go. And regardless, he was meant to go at this time, and he was ready. And it was a beautiful thing. But the main transit here was the Saturn Rahu coming together. And remember, I have said repeatedly through my predictions that when Rahu and Saturn come together, that is when kings sometimes leave this planet. And he was a king. The Pope was the ruler over the Catholic Church. And religion gets all sorts of crazy bad raps in so many ways. But I believe that he was dedicated to his truths, his beliefs. And even though a lot of the Catholics may say, don't follow astrology or psychics, I want you to know that most all of the popes way back a long time ago all had astrologers. Astrology is a science. And I want you to know that the three wise men were astrologers, as many of you know. And what were they doing? Following the stars. The stars will keep us in check and tell us where we're headed, what we're supposed to be doing, and most of all, give us guidance. So with that, I think I'll close. I think you've gotten the gist of why this day was the day and how I was able to predict it. So with that, I'll close, and I hope that I'll be seeing you in many of my new videos coming up here. And remember, if this got you interested in learning Vedic astrology, don't forget you can be part of my university, and you can start any time. It is an amazing school with a community of astrologers. I have students all over the world, and it is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.